It started so small. A favor. They asked to borrow my bank card to pick up my arthritis prescription. I trusted them. I even thanked them. 3 days later, my $40,000 were gone. They used it all, every last penny, for a down payment on a brand new house. A house they had the nerve to flaunt all over social media while I sat alone, staring at an empty bank account and wondering how I would survive. When I confronted them, they laughed. Jason said I was overreacting. Amber said it was just money I'd saved for the rest of my life. I felt like the ground had fallen out from under me, like I was floating somewhere above my own body, watching my whole future slip through their fingers. But what they didn't know, what they never even bothered to ask, was that I still had a few cards of my own to play. After all, if they could take something by accident, couldn't I? But before we begin, dear, comment under this video where in the world you're watching from today. Now let's start from the beginning. I'd always been the type to sense when something wasn't right. Call it mother's intuition or just the wisdom that comes with 73 years of living. But that Thursday afternoon, the moment I stepped through my front door, a chill crawled up my spine that had nothing to do with the autumn breeze outside. "Hello," I called out, setting my grocery bags on the kitchen counter. The house answered back with that hollow silence that feels heavier than noise. Everything looked the same. The stack of mail by the fruit bowl, the half-finished crossword puzzle on the coffee table, my reading glasses perched where I'd left them. But something felt disturbed, like when you return to a room and can tell someone's been through your things, even though nothing is visibly out of place. I shook my head. Maybe I was just being silly. Jason and Amber had been by earlier to pick up my bank card, just a quick errand to get my arthritis prescription refilled while they were out running errands. Such thoughtful kids, offering to save me the trip. Were they, though? The thought bubbled up before I could stop it. I busied myself putting away the groceries, trying to ignore the nagging feeling. But it persisted, a small voice whispering that I should check my bank account just to be safe. I'd never been one for online banking, preferring the reliability of paper statements, but my granddaughter had insisted on setting up the app on my phone last Christmas. "It'll give you peace of mind, Grandma," she'd said. Peace of mind, what a concept. With slightly trembling fingers, I pulled out my phone and navigated to the banking app. The interface still confused me sometimes, but I managed to log in after 2 attempts. The balance loaded, and the numbers stared back at me, impossible and cruel. $212.47. I blinked hard, certain I was misreading. Last week, there had been over $40,000 in that account, my life savings, what remained of Frank's life insurance, the security I'd counted on for my remaining years. My legs gave out beneath me, and I sank onto a kitchen chair. The room tilted slightly as I struggled to breathe. With shaking hands, I navigated to the transaction history, each entry hitting me like a physical blow. $12,000, furniture gallery. $8,500, luxury vacations. $19,700, down payment, First National Mortgage. The dates aligned perfectly with when Jason and Amber had borrowed my card, 3 days ago. "No," I whispered to the empty kitchen. "No, no, no." The prescription they'd offered to pick up cost $12 with my insurance. My stomach clenched as I thought of the gentle way Jason had taken my card, how Amber had hugged me and told me not to worry about a thing. Had they planned this all along? I called the bank immediately, my voice catching as I explained the situation to the customer service representative. Her sympathetic tone only made it worse. "I'm so sorry, ma'am, but these appear to be authorized transactions. The card was physically present, and the correct PIN was entered." "But I didn't authorize them." My voice sounded strange to my own ears, higher, desperate. "It was my son. He was supposed to pick up my prescription." "I understand how upsetting this is. You can file a fraud claim, but since it was a family member you gave your card to..." She didn't need to finish. We both knew what she meant. I'd handed over my financial life along with that small plastic rectangle. I spent the afternoon in a daze, alternating between disbelief and a cold, creeping horror. By evening, when I heard Jason's car in the driveway, I'd moved into something else entirely, a quiet, burning rage that felt foreign in my body. They walked in without knocking, all smiles and casual confidence. Amber was wearing a new dress I'd never seen, the price tag probably equivalent to a month of my grocery budget. "Hey, Mom," Jason said, tossing my bank card onto the coffee table. "Got your pills right here." I looked at the small white bag, then back at their faces. "Would you like to explain why nearly $40,000 is missing from my account?" The flicker that passed between them was brief but unmistakable, not surprise or guilt, but annoyance at being confronted. "Oh, that," Amber laughed, a tinkling sound that scraped against my nerves. "We were going to talk to you about that. Just a little mix-up with the accounts." "A mix-up?" My voice was surprisingly steady. "You spent my entire life savings on furniture and a house down payment by mistake?" Jason sighed dramatically, as if I was being unreasonable. "Mom, it's not like that. We were going to pay you back. We just needed to secure the house before someone else grabbed it. You know how the market is." "When?" I asked. "When were you planning to pay me back?" Another glance between them. "Soon," Jason said vaguely. "Once some investments come through. You're always saying you want to help us get established. This is just a loan." A loan I never agreed to. My voice cracked slightly. "Jason, that's everything I have." Amber rolled her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic. It's just money. Family helps family." "You stole from me." The words hung in the air, stark and undeniable. "God, Mom, it was a silly accident that worked out for everyone." Jason threw up his hands. "Why are you making such a big deal? It's not like you need a house down payment at your age." They left shortly after, annoyed and dismissive, promising to figure something out, but making no concrete commitments. The small white pharmacy bag sat on my table, a $12 prescription purchased with $40,000 of my money. That night, alone in my darkened kitchen, I scrolled through social media on my phone. There they were, Jason and Amber, champagne glasses raised in what I now recognized as their new living room, tagged number new homeowners number blessed. The crushing realization settled over me like a physical weight. They had never planned to return a dime. To them, I was just an easy mark, a convenient ATM to be drained and discarded. My hand trembled as I set down the phone. What would I do now? How would I survive? I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jason and Amber's smiling faces, champagne glasses raised in celebration, paid for with my life savings. By morning, my eyes felt gritty, my body heavy with exhaustion and betrayal. I needed help, and I knew exactly who to call. Nancy and I had been friends for over 30 years. We'd met when she sold me the house after Harold and I decided to downsize, and she'd been my rock through Harold's illness and after his passing. Sharp-witted and fiercely loyal, Nancy had retired from real estate brokerage 5 years ago, but still kept her finger on the pulse of the local market. "I'll be right over," she said immediately when I called, my voice cracking as I tried to explain what had happened. "Put the kettle on." An hour later, we sat at my kitchen table, a pot of Earl Grey between us. I'd laid out everything: the bank statements, the conversation with Jason and Amber, the social media posts. "Those little snakes," Nancy muttered, her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose as she examined my bank statement. "And they didn't even try to hide it, just took everything." "Left me with $812 to my name," I confirmed, the number burned into my brain. "Said it was a silly accident and got annoyed when I was upset." Nancy's eyes narrowed. "This isn't just theft, Margaret. This is elder abuse." I flinched at the term. "I'm not that elderly." "In the eyes of the law, honey, anyone over 65 who's being financially exploited by family qualifies." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "This doesn't add up. A house down payment, furniture, even in this market, 40,000 doesn't get you far. Let's dig deeper." Nancy was in her element, making calls to former colleagues, searching public records online. I sat beside her, alternating between numbness and flashes of white-hot anger. "Margaret." Her voice was tight when she finally looked up from her laptop. "What's your full legal name, including your middle name?" "Margaret Louise Caldwell." "Why?" She turned the screen toward me. "Because there's a new mortgage recorded yesterday for that house they bought, and it's under the name Margaret L. Caldwell." The room seemed to tilt sideways. That's impossible. I didn't sign anything." "Exactly." Nancy's expression was grim. "Your signature is on this document, but you never signed it. Do you understand what that means?" I stared at the screen, at what was supposedly my signature on a document I'd never seen. "They forged my name?" "They did, and it gets worse." Nancy scrolled down, pointing to numbers that made my stomach lurch. "This is a substantial mortgage. The down payment they made with your money was just the beginning. The monthly payments on this are over $2,000. "But I don't understand," I whispered, panic beginning to rise. "If it's in my name, wouldn't the bank have checked my income, my credit?" Nancy nodded grimly. "That's what I'm trying to figure out. My guess, Jason has been planning this for a while. He might have been setting things up for months, mail diverted, documents intercepted. Did you ever sign anything he put in front of you? Power of attorney forms, maybe?" I thought back, a cold feeling spreading through my chest. He had me sign some papers a few months ago, said it was to add me to his insurance policy as a beneficiary. "Oh, Margaret," Nancy's voice softened, "I think we need to pull your credit report immediately." Within the hour, we had our answer. Not only was the mortgage in my name, but there were 3 new credit cards, all maxed out. My pristine credit score had plummeted. The extent of Jason's betrayal was staggering. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice small. "If the mortgage is in my name, but I didn't sign for it?" "It's fraud, clear and simple," Nancy said. "But here's the immediate problem. Legally, until we prove the forgery, that mortgage is yours. If they miss even one payment, it affects your credit, not theirs. And if the bank forecloses, it would be on me," I finished, the full weight of the situation crashing down. "I could lose everything." "Not just that," Nancy added gently. "If they default and you can't cover the payments, the bank could potentially come after your house to recoup their losses. I felt the blood drain from my face. My house? But Harold and I paid it off years ago. It's all I have left. Which is why we need to act quickly. Nancy pulled out a notepad, all business now. First, we file a police report for the theft and the forgery. Then we contact the bank's fraud department. We'll need a lawyer. I know someone who specializes in elder law. And we document everything. The teacup rattled against the saucer as my hands trembled. I set it down before I could spill it. Nancy, I'm scared, I admitted, my voice barely audible. What if we can't prove it? What if I lose my home? Look at me, Margaret. Nancy's eyes were fierce with determination. I won't let that happen. We're going to fight this and we're going to win. Jason picked the wrong women to mess with. I nodded, trying to draw strength from her confidence. The panic was still there, a tight knot in my chest, but alongside it was something else, a spark of the same determination I saw in Nancy's eyes. Tell me what to do, I said, steadying my hands. I'm ready. I spent a restless night after Nancy left, my mind racing through everything we'd discovered. By morning, I'd made my decision. Before we unleashed the legal storm Nancy was preparing, I needed to give Jason one last chance, not because he deserved it, but because I needed to look my son in the eye and hear the truth from his own lips. Are you sure about this? Nancy asked when I called her. He's already shown what he thinks of you. I need to do this, I said firmly. He's still my son. Then don't tip your hand, she warned. Let him think you're still in the dark about the mortgage. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. I'll be careful. Around noon, I called Jason. My heart hammered as I waited for him to pick up. Mom? What's up? His voice sounded carefree, as if he hadn't stolen my life savings just days ago. I was hoping we could talk, I said, keeping my voice steady. About some family matters. Could you come by this afternoon? Is this about the money again? He sighed dramatically. I told you we're going to pay you back. No, it's other things, important things. A pause. Fine. I'll be there around 3. The hours crawled by. I straightened the living room, put on a pot of coffee, and rehearsed what I wanted to say. By the time the doorbell rang, my nerves were stretched to breaking point. Jason strolled in like he owned the place, glancing around with that smile that used to warm my heart, but now sent a chill down my spine. He'd brought nothing, no checkbook, no apology gift, not even the courtesy of being on time. Coffee? I offered, gesturing to the pot I'd prepared. Sure. He flopped onto the sofa, stretching his legs out. So what's this about? I've got plans later. I poured 2 cups, handed him one, and sat in the armchair across from him. Jason, I want to talk about what happened with my savings. He rolled his eyes. Mom, seriously? I thought this was something important. It is important. It's my life savings. And I told you we're going to pay you back. He took a sip of coffee. Things have been tight, that's all. The house needed some work and... The house that you bought with my money, I said quietly. Something flickered across his face. Annoyance, not guilt. Look, we needed the down payment. The opportunity came up suddenly, and we had to move fast. It was an investment for all of us. All of us? How does taking my retirement money help me? Jesus, Mom. He set the cup down with a clatter. You're getting worked up over nothing. You've got this house, your pension. What do you need all that cash for anyway? It was just sitting there. I felt my hands begin to tremble. Jason, that money was for my future, for medical expenses, for what? You're fine, you're healthy. And if something happens, that's what I'm here for. He leaned forward, his tone softening in a way that felt calculated. Mom, I'm your son. Don't you trust me to take care of you? I want to, I whispered. But Jason, you took everything without asking. You dash. Oh, here we go. His face hardened. Nancy's been filling your head with nonsense, hasn't she? I saw her car here yesterday. My blood ran cold. Had he been watching the house? Nancy has nothing to do with this, I said. This is about you and me and what you did. Jason laughed, a harsh sound that bore no resemblance to the little boy's giggle I once treasured. What I did? Mom, you're getting confused. You gave me your card, remember? You told me to use it for whatever we needed. For your prescription, I corrected, not for a house. See, this is what I'm talking about. He shook his head, speaking slowly, as if to a child. You're getting forgetful, confused, mixing things up. The implication struck me like a physical blow. I am not confused, Jason. I know exactly what happened. Do you? His voice took on a patronizing tone. Because from where I'm sitting, you're a woman in her 70s who's getting increasingly paranoid and making accusations against her own son. I felt sick. Are you saying I imagined you taking my money? I'm saying you gave permission and now you're backtracking. His eyes narrowed. And frankly, Mom, it's concerning. First the confusion, now the paranoia. Maybe we need to think about getting you somewhere safe, somewhere with proper care. The threat hung in the air between us. My own son was threatening to have me committed if I didn't drop this. You'd do that? My voice was barely audible. Put me in a home because I asked for my own money back? If you keep causing problems, what choice would I have? He stood up, looming over me. I'm only thinking of what's best for you. In that moment, looking up at this stranger wearing my son's face, I knew. The boy I'd raised, the one I'd read bedtime stories to and bandaged scraped knees for, was gone. This man before me was someone else entirely. I think you should leave, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Think about what I said, Mom. He headed for the door, then turned back. And maybe stop letting Nancy fill your head with ideas. She's always been jealous of our family. After he left, I sat motionless, his words echoing in my ears. Then I reached for my phone and called Nancy. He threatened me, I said when she answered. Said he'd put me in a home if I kept causing problems. That's it, Nancy replied, her voice tight with anger. We're filing everything tonight. I'll be there in 30 minutes. That evening, my dining room table disappeared under a sea of paperwork. Nancy had brought everything: fraud report forms, bank account freeze requests, a police report template, and documents to contest the mortgage. Sign here, Nancy directed, pointing to a marked line, and here, this one goes to the fraud department at your bank. My hand trembled as I signed my name over and over. With each signature, I was declaring war on my own son. What if we're too late? I asked, a sick feeling rising in my throat as I signed the last document. What if they've already spent it all, sold the house, disappeared? Nancy squeezed my shoulder. We'll cross that bridge if we come to it. Right now we're doing everything we can. I nodded, staring down at my signature. The real one, not the forgery Jason had used. I never thought it would come to this. I know, Nancy said softly. But remember, You're not the one who started this fight. You're just finishing it. I watched the sun creep above my neighbor's rooftop the next morning, having barely slept. The teacup in my hands had gone cold, but I couldn't bring myself to care. Nancy would be submitting all our paperwork today, setting in motion something I couldn't stop even if I wanted to. You need to eat something, Nancy said, appearing in my kitchen doorway with her briefcase and a determined expression. She'd stayed over, worried about leaving me alone after Jason's threat. I'm not hungry, I replied, but dutifully took a bite of toast when she pushed the plate toward me. I'll call you as soon as everything's filed, she promised, squeezing my shoulder. Try to keep busy today. Watch those garden shows you like. After she left, I moved through my morning routine like a sleepwalker. Dishes washed, bed made, laundry folded. The ordinary tasks felt surreal, as if I were acting in a play about normal life while my real world was collapsing. I watered my African violets on the windowsill, the same ones I'd had since before Jason was born. Would they survive whatever came next? Would I? The hours crawled by. I checked my phone constantly, jumping whenever it buzzed, but it was never Nancy. By afternoon, my nerves were frayed to breaking. What if something had gone wrong? What if Jason had somehow anticipated our move? I tried calling him, not to warn him, just to hear his voice one more time before everything changed. He didn't pick up. Of course he didn't. That night I stared at the ceiling above my bed, listening to the house settle around me. What were Jason and Amber doing right now? Probably lounging in that beautiful new house, purchased with my life savings, planning how to spend the rest. Did they think they'd gotten away with it? Did they laugh about how easily I'd been fooled? The next day passed in the same fog, and the next. Nancy called with updates. Papers received, processing underway, investigation opened, but nothing concrete happened. No dramatic confrontations, no tearful apologies, just the slow grind of bureaucracy while my anxiety mounted. By the fourth day, I couldn't stand being in the house anymore. I drove to the supermarket just to be around people, pushing my cart aimlessly through the aisles. In the produce section, I reached for an apple and froze. 2 aisles over, Amber stood examining avocados, her blonde hair gleaming under the fluorescent lights. I ducked behind a display of oranges, heart hammering. She hadn't seen me. She looked normal, happy even, as if she hadn't helped destroy someone's life less than a week ago. I abandoned my cart and fled, hands shaking so badly I could barely get my key in the ignition. A week after filing the paperwork, I was sitting in my living room trying to focus on a crossword puzzle when my phone rang. Nancy's name flashed on the screen. "It's happening," she said without preamble, her voice tight with excitement. The fraud investigation triggered an immediate freeze on the mortgage, and because they used your money for the down payment, the bank has initiated foreclosure proceedings. I sank into my armchair, legs suddenly weak. "Are you sure?" "Positive. I just got off the phone with my contact at the bank. The letter should arrive at their house tomorrow or the day after." Relief flooded through me, so intense it made me dizzy. So it worked? They can't hurt me anymore? "They can't touch you," Nancy confirmed. "The bank is treating this as a clear case of fraud. Your money will be returned once the investigation concludes, and Jason and Amber will be facing serious consequences." I closed my eyes, letting the news wash over me. For the first time in days, I could breathe. But as the initial wave of relief receded, A hollow feeling took its place. "They don't know yet, do they?" I asked quietly. "No," Nancy said. "The foreclosure notice will be their first indication that something's wrong." I pictured their faces when they opened that letter. The shock, the panic. Part of me, a small, hurt part, wanted to savor their comeuppance, but mostly I just felt sad. "What happens next?" I asked, moving to my kitchen window. Outside, twilight was deepening into night, the streetlights flickering on one by one. "Well, they'll have to vacate the property," Nancy explained. "The bank will reclaim it, and the criminal investigation will proceed. Given the evidence we've provided, charges are likely." "Charges," I repeated. My son could go to jail. The thought should have horrified me, but I felt numb. "Are you okay?" Nancy asked gently. I stared into the darkness beyond my window. Somewhere out there, Jason and Amber were going about their evening, unaware that their world was about to implode. "Do you think he'll ever understand?" I whispered. Not just that what he did was wrong, but how deeply it hurt me. That it wasn't about the money, it was the betrayal. Nancy was quiet for a moment. "I don't know," she finally said. "Some people never see past themselves." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. The stars were coming out now, pinpricks of light in the vast darkness. I wondered if Jason was looking at the same sky, if he ever thought about the mother who had once pointed out constellations to him. "It's not too late for him to realize," I said, more to myself than to Nancy. "Even after everything, it's not too late." But as I spoke the words, I wasn't sure I believed them. I sat in my old Buick, parked 3 houses down from where my son now lived. The Saturday afternoon sun beat down through my windshield, forcing me to adjust the visor every few minutes. I'd been there nearly an hour, watching as cars pulled up and well-dressed people streamed into Jason and Amber's new house, my house, really, if you followed the paper trail of that forged mortgage. "You don't have to be here for this," Nancy had told me that morning when she called to say today was the day. "The bank's enforcement team will handle everything." But I needed to see it with my own eyes. Maybe it was closure I was looking for, or maybe just confirmation that justice existed in this world. The street had filled with expensive cars, shiny SUVs and sleek sedans that made my 15-year-old Buick look like it belonged in a junkyard. Every few minutes another group would arrive, the women in flowing summer dresses, the men in crisp button-downs. They carried gift bags and bottles of wine. One couple even brought a potted tree. "Building quite the life with my money, aren't you?" I whispered, my throat tight. Through the large front windows, I could see people mingling inside. Someone had hung a banner, "Home Sweet Home," across the entryway. The irony made my stomach turn. Amber flitted between groups, her blonde hair catching the sunlight as she threw her head back in laughter. Even from this distance, I could see she was wearing new jewelry, probably another purchase funded by my retirement savings. A group gathered on the front lawn, raising glasses for a toast. Jason stood at the center, his arm around Amber's waist, beaming with pride as if he'd earned any of this. I sank lower in my seat, though I knew they couldn't see me from this distance. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. "This is what you wanted," I reminded myself. "This is justice." But why did justice have to hurt so much? A sleek black sedan pulled up to the curb directly in front of the house. It wasn't like the other guest cars. This one was official-looking, with tinted windows and government plates. My breath caught as 2 men in suits stepped out, followed by a uniformed officer. They carried a folder of papers, and what looked like tools. "Here we go," I whispered, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The men approached the house with purpose, ignoring the curious stares from the guests on the lawn. One of them, tall with salt and pepper hair, knocked firmly on the door. When no one answered, the music inside was too loud, the laughter too raucous, he nodded to his colleagues and began attaching something to the front door. Even from my vantage point, I could see the bright red letters, "Foreclosure Notice." The party guests on the lawn fell silent, exchanging confused glances. Someone hurried inside, presumably to find Jason. The uniformed officer began changing the locks, working efficiently as if he'd done this 100 times before. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt sick. The front door burst open and Jason appeared, his face flushed with anger or alcohol or both. Amber hovered behind him, her perfect makeup contorted in confusion. I couldn't hear what was being said, but I could see Jason gesturing wildly, pointing at the notice, then at the house, then at himself. The official-looking man remained calm, handing Jason the folder of papers. Jason snatched it, flipping through the pages with increasing agitation. Amber peered over his shoulder, her expression changing from confusion to horror. By now, the party had spilled outside. Guests stood in awkward clusters, pretending not to stare while stealing glances at the unfolding drama. Some had their phones out, recording, no doubt. By evening, this scene would be all over social media. Jason's voice carried across the lawn, growing louder with each word. "This is a mistake. This is my house." The officials shook their heads. One pointed to something in the paperwork. Jason's face went from red to white in an instant. "My name." They were pointing to my name on the mortgage. Amber grabbed the papers, her mouth moving rapidly as she read. Then she looked up at Jason, her expression shifting from shock to fury. She shoved him, hard enough that he stumbled backward, and stormed back into the house. The party guests were leaving now, slipping away to their cars with embarrassed glances and hushed conversations. A few lingered, perhaps friends close enough to offer support, or just curious enough to want the full story. Jason stood alone on the lawn, the papers clutched in his hand, looking lost in a way I hadn't seen since he was a little boy who'd wandered too far at the county fair. For a moment, just a moment, my heart ached for him. Then I remembered his cold laugh when I'd confronted him, the casual way he'd dismissed my pain, Amber's mocking smile as she'd called my life savings just money. My resolve hardened. This wasn't revenge, it was consequences, long overdue consequences for choices they had made. The officials were leaving now, having completed their task. The new locks gleamed in the sunlight. Jason remained on the lawn, shoulders slumped, as his perfect life crumbled around him. I started my car, hands steadier than they'd been in weeks. As I pulled away from the curb, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The image of Jason standing alone, amid the wreckage of his lies, would stay with me long enough. I drove home in a daze. The image of Jason standing alone on that perfect lawn burned into my memory. The house I'd just left behind, the one they'd bought with my money, wasn't theirs anymore. It never had been. My phone buzzed with a text from Nancy. "It's done. Come over if you need company." I sent back a quick later and kept driving. I needed to be alone with my thoughts for a while. By the next morning, my phone was lighting up with notifications. Our small town had always thrived on gossip, but this was different. This was a scandal with receipts. "Have you seen this?" Nancy asked when she called, her voice pitched higher than usual. "It's all over the Mill Creek Community Forum." I hadn't checked any social media. Couldn't bring myself to look yet. What are they saying? Everything. Someone at the party posted videos. The foreclosure, Jason yelling at the officials, Amber storming off. People are connecting the dots about where that down payment came from. My stomach tightened. They're mentioning me? Not by name, but there's speculation. Listen, turn on Channel 7. They're doing a segment on mortgage fraud. I fumbled for the remote with trembling fingers. Sure enough, there was a local reporter standing outside what had briefly been Jason and Amber's house. The foreclosure notice was clearly visible behind her. One of several cases of mortgage fraud being investigated in the county, she was saying. Sources close to the investigation say the couple allegedly forged documents and misappropriated funds. They didn't mention my name, but anyone who knew Jason would make the connection. I sank deeper into my couch, a strange mix of vindication and sorrow washing over me. Throughout the day, the story grew. By afternoon, someone had posted screenshots from Amber's business page, her online boutique where she sold overpriced accessories with inspirational quotes. The comments section had become a battleground. "Isn't this the same person who just got foreclosed on for fraud? How can we trust someone who steals from their own family? I want a refund. I'm not supporting thieves." Nancy came over with takeout and her laptop. We sat at my kitchen table while she showed me everything that was happening online. Amber's boutique was being flooded with one-star reviews. Former clients were publicly canceling orders. Her perfectly curated social media presence was crumbling post by post. "She's losing everything," I murmured, watching the train wreck unfold on Nancy's screen. "They both are," Nancy said, pulling up another page. "Jason's been trying to do damage control. Look." It was a post from Jason, hastily written and desperate. "Many of you have heard rumors about our situation. I want to set the record straight. My elderly mother has been struggling with memory issues and confusion. She became convinced I had stolen from her and has been on a vindictive campaign to destroy what Amber and I have built. We're working with authorities to resolve this misunderstanding and hope for your support during this difficult time." The blood drained from my face. He's saying I'm senile? That I made it all up? Nancy squeezed my hand. "Nobody's buying it. Look at the comments." She was right. People were skeptical, pointing out inconsistencies in his story. Several mentioned they'd seen the foreclosure notice with their own eyes. One person, a former banking colleague of Nancy's, had commented, "Foreclosures don't happen because of misunderstandings. They happen because of documentation." And Nancy had made sure the documentation was airtight. Every fraudulent signature Jason had made, every transaction from my account, the mortgage paperwork with my forged name, it all pointed directly back to him and Amber. "He can't wriggle out of this one," Nancy said, closing her laptop. "The evidence is too solid." I nodded, but the satisfaction I'd expected to feel was hollow. My son, my only child, had not only stolen from me, but was now trying to convince the world I was losing my mind. How had we come to this? That night after Nancy left, I wandered through my quiet house, the same house where I'd raised Jason, where I'd kissed his scraped knees and helped with science projects and celebrated birthdays. The walls seemed to echo with memories of a different time, a different son. I paused at the hallway photo gallery, decades of family moments frozen in time. Jason's graduation, his wedding day, the three of us, Jason, his father, and me, at the Grand Canyon. I'd left these photos up even after everything, unable to erase 35 years of love despite what had happened. I sank into my armchair, suddenly exhausted. The victory I'd won felt Pyrrhic. Yes, I'd reclaimed my financial security. Yes, Jason and Amber were facing the consequences of their actions. But at what cost? My family was gone, not just temporarily gone, but fundamentally broken in a way that might never heal. Jason wasn't just angry with me. He was publicly smearing my mental capacity, doubling down on his betrayal, rather than admitting what he'd done. Was winning worth losing my family? The question hung in the silence of my empty house. I had no answer, only the dull ache of a wound that victory couldn't heal. 6 weeks after the foreclosure notice appeared on Jason and Amber's door, I stood in the middle of my new living room, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and the gentle afternoon light streaming through uncovered windows. The condo wasn't large, just 2 bedrooms with an open kitchen and living area, but it was mine, completely mine. No strings attached, no manipulative children lurking in the shadows, no risk of having it stolen from under me. "What do you think about this spot for the reading chair?" Nancy asked, dragging my old armchair toward the corner where sunlight pooled on the hardwood floor. She'd been my rock through this entire ordeal, and here she was, still looking out for the little comforts that make a house feel like home. "Perfect," I said, smiling as I watched her arrange the small side table beside it. "That's exactly where I'd imagined it." I could already picture myself curled up there with a book and a cup of tea, watching the seasons change through that window. After everything settled legally, I'd found myself with enough salvaged funds to purchase this small place outright. No mortgage, no debt, no vulnerability. The fraud investigation had recovered most of my savings, though some of what Jason and Amber spent was gone forever, blown on their extravagant lifestyle and those ridiculous matching cars they just had to have. Still, I had enough to start over, to create something new and entirely my own, a fresh chapter that nobody could tear from my book. "I still can't believe how quickly you found this place," I said, unpacking a box of kitchen items, my fingers lingering on the familiar weight of my grandmother's serving spoon. Nancy laughed, that warm chuckle that always put me at ease. 30 years in real estate has its perks. I knew this would be perfect for you the minute it hit the market. She paused, looking around. "It feels right, doesn't it?" I nodded, feeling a flutter of something I hadn't experienced in months. Contentment. Was I allowed to feel this way after everything? The condo was in a quiet community with a small garden courtyard, walking distance to shops and the library. Most importantly, it was 20 miles from my old neighborhood, from the whispers and sideways glances, from the house where memories of Jason's childhood haunted every corner. The house where he'd taken his first steps, lost his first tooth, and later plotted to take everything I had. "Have you heard anything?" Nancy asked carefully, arranging my collection of teacups in the kitchen cabinet. Her hands moved deliberately, giving me space to answer or deflect. I knew what she meant without asking. "No," I said quietly. "Nothing since the final court date." My heart gave that familiar twinge. Would it ever stop? The judge had ordered Jason and Amber to pay restitution on top of the fraud charges. They'd avoided jail time, but their credit was destroyed. Amber's boutique business had collapsed under the scandal, and last I'd heard they were staying with Amber's parents in another state. Jason hadn't tried to contact me since his failed attempt to paint me as confused and vindictive. His last words in court still echoed sometimes. She's just bitter and lonely, as if that justified what he'd done. Sometimes, Nancy said gently, silence is the kindest thing people like Jason can offer. She placed the last teacup on the shelf with finality. I nodded, though the truth still stung like salt in an open wound. My only child had chosen to disappear rather than face what he'd done. Some nights I still woke up wondering where I'd gone wrong, what I could have done differently. Was it when his father died? When I remarried? When I didn't buy him that car for his 16th birthday? Other nights I reminded myself that adults make their own choices, and Jason had made his, repeatedly, deliberately. We worked through the afternoon, unpacking boxes and arranging furniture. Around 4 o'clock, Nancy insisted we take a break. She disappeared to her car and returned with a small wrapped package and a bottle of champagne. "Housewarming," she announced, setting both on the kitchen counter. "Open it." Her eyes twinkled with anticipation. I carefully unwrapped the paper to find a simple wooden plaque, hand-painted with elegant lettering. "Home is where you do right by others." My throat tightened as I ran my fingers over the words. Such a simple truth, yet one Jason had never understood. "Nancy ... I whispered, feeling tears well up. "You did right," she said firmly, "by yourself and by the world. You stood up for truth when it would have been easier to look away." Her hand squeezed my shoulder, steady and warm. I clutched the plaque to my chest, tears spilling over. "But I lost my son." Nancy shook her head, taking my free hand. "You lost the illusion of who you thought your son was. That's different, and eventually it hurts less." There was something in her eyes that told me she knew this truth from her own life. We opened the champagne and sat on packing boxes, toasting my new beginning. Later, after Nancy left, I found the perfect spot for the plaque, right by my front door, where I'd see it every time I entered or left. As I hammered in the nail and hung it carefully, a soft breeze drifted through the open windows, carrying the scent of the courtyard flowers. I stood back, admiring how the plaque looked against the pale blue wall. The sadness was still there. I suspected it always would be, but something else had taken root alongside it. A fragile sense of safety, of rightness, of peace. Was this what healing felt like? Not the absence of pain, but the presence of something stronger growing beside it? That night I made up my bed with fresh sheets and settled in, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of my new home, the distant hum of traffic, the gentle tick of the kitchen clock, the soft rustle of leaves from the tree outside my window, no echoes of Jason's childhood laughter, no phantom footsteps on stairs he once raced up and down. For the first time in years, I felt truly at home, not because of where I was, but because of who I was. Someone who had chosen integrity over illusion, truth over comfortable lies. The path had been harder than I could have imagined, but lying here in the quiet darkness, I knew it had been the right one. I turned onto my side, pulling the blanket up to my chin. The heaviness in my heart for Jason remained, a dull ache that flared when I least expected it. But beneath that pain was something stronger, something that had been forged in the fire of betrayal and emerged tempered and true, a deeper peace that had settled into my very bones. I was going to be okay. Different, perhaps. Changed, certainly. But okay. And for tonight, that was enough. If you enjoyed this story, I handpicked this next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Chloe, please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.